Welcome to the Toastmasters Experience. My name is Evelyn. Get inspired by today's Toastmasters Insights. Enjoy the show. And welcome to another episode of the Toastmasters Experience. I'm excited, delighted, and honored to have my next guest, who is a Blue Mountains Toastmasters alumni, Jess Kingsford. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to have you here. I interview current and past members of Toastmasters to find out what they got out of this amazing organization. So we're just going to start at the beginning. What made you join Blue Mountains Toastmasters, and how long were you a member for?
Well, it was probably two things. My mother-in-law was a Toastmasters member for many years and just raved about it and how great it was for her business and just all of her speaking skills. But I sort of didn't really pay much attention to that. And then I did a PhD in childhood moral development, and I knew I wanted to get better at presenting and speaking. I mean, I was fine, but I still had a lot of nerves. And so that's when I thought, right, I'm going to do Toastmasters so that I'm going to become a better speaker. I'm going to be able to give research presentations. I'm going to be able to speak to parents. I was quite intentional about that. So I finished my PhD in 2018, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And I think it was 2019 that I joined. Mm-hmm. And so I was quite intentional about why I joined. I knew it was going to serve my career and my ambitions to speak to large groups of people.
Yeah. And so you joined, but I know a little bit of your history because you're also in the theater. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes. Well, that was many years ago. My first career was as a theater director.
Okay.
And also did a bit of writing and acting, but mainly it was as a theatre director. Okay. So, look, I had a lot of it. And doing my PhD, I had a lot of experience getting up in front of people and speaking. But I really felt like I didn't have some core skills. I just hoped Toastmasters would help me in those areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did it?
Oh, incredibly so. And I was thinking about it before I came and spoke to you. I was thinking, what would be a good example of how much of a difference it made? And probably towards the end of my time in Toastmasters, I had to do two big things. Well, not massive, but I'm also the president of a charity in my late sister's name, the Vanessa Grant Trust. And I became president. And I knew I had to give the big speech at our biennial big fundraiser. Mm-hmm. So I did that probably, I think it was 2023. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people came up to me afterwards and said, "Wow, that was so good. Oh, wow. Where did you learn to, speak like that?" And I thought, you know what? I would not have been able to give that kind of a speech if I hadn't gone to Toastmasters.
What do you think specifically it was in Toastmasters that got you to that level? Because obviously you are an experienced speaker.
I think it was a few things. It was learning how to structure a speech well. Mm-hmm. It was practice. That was a big one. I mean, that's what's great about Toastmasters. You're constantly thrown in at the deep end. And the table topics element I really loved because I was always used to preparing and over-preparing everything I said. Yeah. So having to get up with no preparation and speak was probably the best thing for me. Mm-hmm. And having to do that on a weekly basis. I mean, we were meeting nearly weekly, weren't we?
Yeah.
So that was really good. And just the really constructive feedback I was getting, because I learned to become aware of all of my fillers in a way that I had not been before.
Okay.
And I identified when those were happening and when they weren't.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was just a whole bunch of skills that I got through Toastmasters.
Yeah. So how long were you a Toastmaster then?
I think it was about 3 years.
About 3 years.
Yeah.
So it obviously benefited your personal and your business life.
Yeah.
So just give me some examples, your personal life and your business life, how it's benefited you.
Well, another example of my personal life is about that same time I had to speak to our whole family for my dad's 90th. There was a big reunion. Mm-hmm. And I was a bit nervous about that, but I think I did a really good job at that as well. Lots of people came up to me after and said, "Oh, that was so beautiful. That was such a great speech." And again, I think that was because of Toastmasters. Professionally, I now have a role with this not-for-profit entity that I've established where I'm doing a lot of presenting. I'm teaching and speaking to groups of parents, and hopefully I'll be interviewed a bit more as we start to get a bit more publicity, a bit more of a presence. So Toastmasters has helped me a lot in that area as well, professionally, being able to identify what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are in terms of preparing speeches, speaking, all of those little fillers that I'm still working on. I just did another one. But just that awareness, I suppose, is just such a fantastic thing to gain. Because I think if you don't do Toastmasters, you just keep making the same mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so
it's
true.
through Toastmasters and that feedback, the critical analysis that you're constantly getting, that initially I was like, oh, that's weird. That's, I've never had any of that before. And I was having to give presentations at uni through my PhD. You have to keep getting up and presenting to the whole faculty, where your research is up to and everything. And people would say, oh, that's really interesting research, but no one would ever give me any feedback about how I had presented, nor should they. That's not what those events are about. So it was really Toastmasters that provided that for me.
Yeah, we've had quite a few members at Blue Mountains Toastmasters who are getting their PhD and who've joined, just a year or 2 years, but so you've really seen the benefits of Toastmasters, and I guess because you're presenting a lot. Sounds like you're presenting a lot.
Yeah, and I think I was a bit disappointed to stop going, but I just became so busy, and even though I knew I probably would continue to benefit and I would continue to grow, I certainly didn't feel like I had learned everything there was to learn, but I felt I'd learned enough to take it into my business and to use, I felt like I'd gotten to a good point. Yeah. And I still kind of think, I'd love to go back to Toastmasters. I really need to, refresh all the things I learned, and hopefully I will.
Yes.
But right now, just so busy with this new entity.
Well, tell me a little bit about your new entity, Happy Hearts Parents. Tell me what that is all about.
Happy Hearts Parenting. Yeah. Well, when I did my PhD, I'd learned so much about childhood moral development, and I was a parent myself at the time with quite young children, and I just felt it was all so useful to me, and I just thought, this has got to be out there. It doesn't seem to be out there in the public domain for other parents and carers of young children. So even while I was doing my PhD, I knew I wanted to create something that was going to be useful. I didn't want to be sort of stuck in academia in the ivory towers, continuing to do research and publish, but those papers were just read by other scientists, really. So I wanted to step out of academia and make something useful. And the other key part of it was discovering, I suppose, how powerfully childhood moral development is linked to well-being.
Okay.
Not just in childhood, but throughout our lives. And I don't think that wisdom is out there enough. I don't think we talk about that relationship enough. And what with the backdrop of, such troubling mental health issues at the moment in not just Australia but across the developed world, I knew that this was an important thing to do as well, to help parents find another way, I suppose, to help their children experience more deep and lasting well-being than the kind of strategies that is often used by parents, which is, I just want my child to be successful, do well, have a great job, have great opportunities, great experiences. But all of those strategies, there's nothing wrong with them, and we certainly used them in our own parenting, but they're very self-focused. They're very focused on the individual becoming the best that they can be. Yeah. And I think what's the piece that's missing in that puzzle is how profoundly meaningful and rewarding it is for children to recognise how deeply their well-being is dependent on and connected to the well-being of other people, and the sense of interdependence, interconnectedness that comes from that recognition, and the sense that we're all caring for and about each other, that can be a source of well-being in a way that self-realisation and becoming, you know, having the best career that you wanted doesn't quite do that. And I will just mention, a lot of people are talking about the Harvard study, you know, the longest running study of adult development. I think it's been going for 78 years or something. And the simple conclusion that they came to was the variable that seemed to predict long and happy and healthy lives was good relationships.
Yeah.
It wasn't a fantastic career. It wasn't the holiday house. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't even adventures. It was, and not just good relationships, not just heaps of friends, actually knowing that the friends you have, you can depend on them, that, you know, there's an interdependence there, a sense that we all care about and for each other. And I just think that we get that as adults, you know, but we really need to help children right from the very beginning.
Wow.
Weave that into their own sense of themselves.
Yeah. Just for some people who don't know what the Harvard study is. I mean, I've heard of it. Can you just summarize that?
Well, currently the lead researcher is Richard Waldinger, and he's got some great TED Talks out there, so just look it up. It started 75 years ago, and they took a group of kids, actually, from different classes, and they studied just every aspect of their lives and their education, and as they grew up, their various measures of success and how long they lived for. And now they're doing their children, and now women are involved, and it's just a fascinating study. And really what they were looking at is what makes people flourish. That was the primary research question. And if we study people for long enough, their whole lives, then we might be able to see what the determinants are of flourishing and a long and happy life. And I think it's gotten so much publicity and traction now because of this message that it's so much to do with good relationships and a sense of, I think the question that they put to people was, who can you call, or how many people can you call at 3 a.m. when you need someone? And that was, you know, a fairly good predictor of how well people were in themselves and their sense of happiness and longevity.
I know they did another study in England as well with students but I don't know the name of it, and I will edit this out. But but have you heard of that one? It was amazing because it was on television.
Do you mean the 7-Up one?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was sort of another one.
It was another one, although they did have a small group of people.
Yes.
That they followed the whole time.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't think it was quite as comprehensive as the Harvard study. And the Harvard study's hundreds of participants.
Yes.
And it's, I think because there's such a larger sample group, the findings are a bit more reliable.
Yeah. So I know that you were starting your project before COVID, and then COVID has happened. So I'm sure did you find other findings through this process, or were you?
Are we talking about Toastmasters or the parenting?
Well, parenting, Toastmasters. I mean everything. So because I mean it was and we're still dealing with the effects of COVID, and. Are your children? You tell me.
Well, I'll say something about Toastmasters. I was a bit disappointed initially that we all had to go to Zoom.
Yeah.
But it turns out that has actually been quite helpful for me because I learned to speak on camera through COVID and turning up for Toastmasters.
Yeah.
So that was a blessing in the end. But in terms of kids and parenting and stuff, we know that those COVID lockdowns have been quite consequential for kids for various reasons. And my sister's a teacher, so she's seeing those kids coming through primary school, and I've got some other friends. And I think the thing that was most damaging for kids was the isolation and not being able to socialize is not a very good word, but not being able to hang out with other kids and everything that kids learn from hanging out with other kids. And I think that was a real loss for that little cohort of kids who were really young.
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, who really should have been spending all of their times with, and And I think that's been difficult for parents. But, you know, there's a whole sort of readjustment phase for parents and getting their kids involved in school life and friendships and everything. So I'm not saying for a second that is a lifelong, you know, that's caused lifelong damage for these kids. But it was certainly, unfortunately, a price to pay for being in lockdown.
Yeah. So with your Happy Hearts Parents program.
Happy Hearts Parenting.
Happy Hearts Parenting. Yeah. Have you incorporated, I guess, something that you've learned from the last few years, or what have you been incorporating?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you that the program is an online evidence-based parenting program. It's called the Foundations Program. It's 10 lessons, 20 to 40 minutes each, and I deliver them. They're very visually engaging. And it's really, we do two things. We teach parents of early childhood age children about childhood moral development, a sort of whole of childhood model. This is what happens and this is when it happens. But more than that, I really wanted it to be practical. So for every lesson, there's a whole section on, okay, this is what you can do, with examples and scripts and you know, really practical things that parents can do to promote things like compassionate behaviour, you know, a gratitude mindset, generosity, thinking of balancing their needs with the needs of others, all these things that are involved in children becoming the kind of people who care about others and contribute to the well-being of others. And, you know, ironically, that delivers dividends to their own well-being.
This program, is it something that everybody can become a part of, or how do we find out about it?
Well, we have a website, and the program is available online. You can purchase it, and you get 3 years of unlimited access to all the content.
Okay.
Because I really wanted parents to have that amount of time. It's not like a short 3-week program that is over and done with. These are techniques that really take years to to integrate into family life. Yeah. So parents have 3 years of access to the program, and they can join the Happy Hearts community. We have a Facebook and Insta account, and we're just getting started, so we don't have heaps of followers yet, but we would love some more support for sure.
And what age group? Like what? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I suppose ideally the techniques and strategies are probably best suited to really young children, so sort of 3 to 5-year-olds. However, nothing in the program can't be applied to parenting children of any age. In fact, my business partner has kids in their mid to late teens, and she found what she had learned through the program useful in her parenting.
Okay.
So everything, because it's really about human behaviour and motivation and emotions, and so nothing is only applicable to little kids. It's just that the earlier that parents start applying these techniques and strategies and this whole approach to parenting really, the more effective and the more positive a role that they can play in that development. I mean, we all know this. The later that we try to get our kids to do things or influence their opinion about things or how they're interpreting something, the later we start to play that role, the harder it is.
Yes, of course.
So that's the only reason we're targeting parents of really young children, because
yeah. And how old are your children now?
My kids are 16 and 18. Ash has left home now. He's down in Sydney, but late.
And did you apply these techniques to
It's so funny. I always get asked that question. People go, "What are your kids like?" Well, they might listen to this, so I have to be careful what I say. No, look, I think they're fantastic kids. We absolutely adore them, and they're both quite kind and grateful. And gratitude is a huge thing. And I think one thing that Lawrence and I did intuitively right from the very beginning, we really tried to instill in our children a sense of gratitude. Because, and through my research and developing this program, I've realised how important that is for moral sensibilities, because if you have a gratitude mindset, then giving is easy, because you feel like everything's a win.
Yes.
You're just lucky.
Yes.
So why wouldn't you pay it forward?
Yeah.
But if you have a sort of what's called a victim mindset, and a sense that everybody else's gain is your loss, that sort of a mentality, then giving is painful. because it's a cost to you.
Yeah.
So I really, we have a whole lesson on mindsets and moral mindsets. But back to the kids, our kids luckily have always, and I suppose take a bit of credit for that. It was quite important for us that they developed a gratitude mindset. And I think that probably has a bit to do with why they're such lovely, kind kids. But the other tip I have, and I'm really trying to promote this idea, is one thing we did right, I think, was we had meals together every night. Not every night. Sometimes we had a movie night or whatever, but it just became, it was just what we did. And, you know, nowadays when so many families spend so little time together, some kids eat in their rooms or they eat at different times. I don't think I realised at the time what a profound impact this was going to have on our kids.
Yeah.
That just that point of contact once in the day.
Yeah.
You know, when we'd sit around and we'd have a meal. And they certainly went through a stage probably in their early to mid-teens when they didn't want to speak. It was just a bit of grunting and they couldn't wait to leave the table. But, you know, we just suffered through those years. And now they actually really enjoy dinner time because, and if anything, they want to keep chatting. I mean, it's become a time when we have the great conversations.
Yeah.
But in the early years, it was definitely a chore, but we really held our ground, you know, meals, dinners together were really quite important.
Yeah, and it's a simple thing, isn't it? Because it's something we have to eat. You know, so,
but, you know, it's amazing how it's not ubiquitous. So many families don't have meals together.
That's true.
But
That's true.
You know, there is some research linking the frequency that families have meals together to the likelihood that the children in that family are going to experience some kind of depressive symptoms later on. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. So it is actually it's not just fun, it's quite important that, you know, families try to have meals together.
So this does sound like a program that everyone can benefit from. You don't even need to have young children, just how to relate.
I do feel that. I mean, I haven't pushed that, but I really do feel that.
Yeah.
And, you know, interestingly, pretty much every lesson, there's a moment in the lesson when I am really appealing to the adult who's watching the lesson to say, okay, we all think that modelling is the one and only method available to parents for helping to raise, or rather to going about raising, you know, good and kind children. But it's only one of actually many strategies we can employ, but it is nevertheless a strategy. So there is a point in each of the lessons where I suppose hold the mirror up and say, okay, this is a moment for you to, you know, how empathetic am I? How compassionate am I? What is my child seeing? And do I demonstrate in the way I speak about others, do I demonstrate joy at other people's success or bitterness and resentment? You know, there's that abundance mindset, which is quite important. Yeah. So,
and I just listening to you, I feel these are so many lessons that we've learned in Toastmasters. Like accepting, you know, feedback and working towards bettering ourselves. And so we know it's really improved your Toastmasters, really improved your professional life for sure. And that is something about Toastmasters I think some people don't realize, even though we bring our professional lives, your theatrical background, all this, you still wanted more. You still wanted to improve yourself. Yeah.
Oh, I think that, you know, that was another useful thing about Toastmasters is seeing, I think occasionally we would see, or maybe it was through the website, you'd see an exemplar.
Yeah.
You know, an exemplar speaker. And obviously TED Talks have provided that for us as well. And it's just great to be reminded of really what it looks like when people are outstanding public speakers and how engaging people can be. And so I know that I still have so far to go, and I see myself on a lifelong journey of developing skills, really to you know, communicate and influence and persuade and listen, and there's just so many things involved, and hopefully I will continue to improve forever. I think I'll have to come back to Toastmasters.
Yes, I hope so. We need you. We always need new members and just new
Yeah.
energy. But yeah.
I loved it when I was there. I
Yeah,
really
no,
did.
and we loved having you. We really loved having you. But it's good to have old members come back.
Yeah.
Not old members, past members. You're not old. Past members come back and just share their stories
Yeah.
because it does influence a lot of people's lives, even if it's just for a short period that they've joined.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you, Jess, what advice would you give someone considering joining Toastmasters?
I think probably when people who have never done Toastmasters, when that word comes up, they probably have quite a constrained idea about or limited idea of what Toastmasters is. And perhaps that's the thing I would advise people to drop and to give it a go, because Toastmasters is so many things, so many experiences that I didn't expect. I thought it was going to be this one thing, I suppose, and I joined it because I wanted that thing, but so much more came along for the ride that I wasn't expecting, but I appreciated. And so I guess my advice would be, try not to second guess what Toastmasters is going to be like, and give it a go, because you might be surprised at all the things that you didn't expect to experience and to enjoy. Yeah, that would be my advice, I'd
Yeah,
say.
definitely. You do join new things and you don't realize what it's going to bring until you take that leap
Yeah,
of faith.
for sure, yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been such a
Pleasure.
pleasure having you
Yeah,
in
well,
the
thanks
studio
for
today.
having me.
Okay. Thank you so much for your company. Please tune in next time to the Toastmasters Experience.